Hello friends and subscribers, GM Danielson here of Horrorcraft, welcoming you to the first Scary Walmart Stories video of my channel. Can you believe 400 videos live, 700 videos total, and I've never done stories about Walmart? I've even done Whole Foods stories, for heaven's sake. Or rather, for hell's sake, what am I saying? Well friends, this video will change that. In fact, it starts a trend on the channel, first volume of Scary Walmart Stories, friends, which, as you know from that little title, means that there will be more stories on this subject. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. Friends, I hope you enjoy these first true Scary Walmart stories on Horrorcraft. Up first, we have one of my favorites, a verified true scary story, friends. So you know the submitter told the truth with this one, friends. This is Goolaboo's 2 a.m. Walmart adventure. This happened to me at some point between the cusp of fall and winter of last year, 2020. Pandemic was just beginning to rage. At the time, my husband and I both worked weekend night shift jobs, him at an IT service, me as a CNA in a local hospital's ICU. As we had no reason to be up and awake during the day, we lived a rather vampire-like schedule, sleeping all day and staying up at night. 4 days off, 3 12-hour shifts a week. It worked. The best part about being a night dweller, though, was the fact that you could go, or be used to be able to go, in the middle of the night to do your grocery shopping. And you know what that means. No lines, no hustle and bustle. You just go at your own leisure and dodge the occasional pallet of stock or graveyard shift workers who's filling up shelves and probably wishing everyone present would quit taking things away right as he stocks them. Anyways, it was 2 a.m., peak energy time for me and hubby. This Walmart was a pretty decent one too, in a good part of town, and everything was well lit, so I typically didn't feel nervous walking around in the middle of the night. Hubs did a tour in Iraq and has a good head on his shoulders, as you'd expect, so even less reason to be concerned, right? Right. As we walked through the entrance, my eyes immediately drifted towards the seasonal section. I have ADHD and I'm a pain when shopping, according to Hubs, as I tend to wander off when something neat catches my eye. Unbeknownst to me, Hubs noticed a small gaggle of young people behaving rather immaturely. In other words, riding around in the electric handicap carts, intentionally smashing into the corner displays and causing some general havoc. Oblivious to this all, I was still wandering around, while he patiently followed after, filling our cart here and there along the way. Hubs saw these kid adults causing more trouble near the back of the store in the food, almost shoes section. But once again, my attention was more on important things, like looking at the blind bag toys I have absolutely no need for. We made it to the end of our shopping journey and headed toward the self-checkout, since they didn't bother staffing the lanes in the middle of the night. While my hubby scanned the bags, I excused myself to use the restroom and to go after a couple of Pokemon Go things on my app. I dilly-dallied long enough that he had checked out and was back at the car by the time I walked out. I made my way over to the SUV modern-day station wagon we owned, where he was busy loading the groceries into the trunk. Hubs was very particular about how things were packed. He had great spatial awareness, which was fine by me, so we had a system. He loaded, I returned to the cart holder thing. While I waited for him to finish loading, I heard a bunch of snickering and laughter coming from the car to the right of ours, so the cart and Hubs was between me and the other vehicle. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but those kid adults who had been in the store were sitting in the car the entire time he was unloading our spoils of war into the trunk, mocking and jeering at him for basic things, like what he was wearing, what was printed on his t-shirt, Pokemon Go logo, if anyone cared, I made him wear that, and other trivial things. Once I returned to the car, however, all focus turned toward me. It took me a second to realize that they were actually addressing us, but soon I could make out what they were saying. They were laughing at my husband, asking him if he actually scented a whale like me. Now, I'm no string bean by a long shot, but neither am I a giant potato. In my defense, does anyone really dress up to go to Walmart at 2 a.m.? They honed in on my size and appearance and encouraged each other to keep throwing pot shots in our directions at the fact that we were together, that we even had sex, anything that they could think of to make fun of us with. Being the sensitive person that I am, I could already feel my eyes beginning to moisten. I figured we should just finish what we were doing and leave them behind in their gloating foolishness, but Hubs, he wasn't going to have any of it. It was one thing, according to him, for them to mock him, but when they started being cruel about me, he'd hit his limit. He's truly a non-violent man, but he was so riled up by what they started saying that he balled up his fist, raised his voice, and told them to shut up with a decent smack against their side window, which they conveniently rolled up on his approach. My knight in shining armor coming to my defense. That action caused a series of quick, chaotic reactions. The young men, 3 of them, started angrily yelling, and I distinctly heard one of them ask the other if he wanted his gun, to which the ringleader said, "Yeah, get it." I told my Hubs to get into the car in a panicked rush and decided to abandon the shopping cart in front of their car in hopes of creating an obstacle for them. I flung myself into the SUV, and by this point, one young man had started smacking on our hood of our car, whilst another stepped behind it, trying to block us in. I vividly remembered through my blurry vision seeing a young woman in the back seat of their vehicle, looking somewhat embarrassed as she mouthed, "I'm sorry," in our direction. No time to think about that, though, not with the ringleader appearing from the car at any moment. Hubs pulled the car into reverse, and the young man behind us had no choice but to move, lest he become a human pancake. Hubs drove off out of the parking lot like a bat out of hell, and it was clearly evident that my cart obstacle did little to delay them, as their Dodge Dart was right on our tail, flying down the road right beside us. We made it through one green light before they caught up to us, sidling up to us in the lane next to us, while I was trying to remember to breathe, thoughts going a different direction. I could see the passenger window roll down again, and out came a handgun, pointed right in my, or Hub's, direction. I screamed something to the effect of them having a gun, though I was not sure it came out as anything incoherent. Hubs got the point, though, and chose that moment to swerve directly at them with our vehicle, leaving them no choice but to drive into the median or be hit by a bigger vehicle going 40 miles an hour. They did swerve, thankfully, which slowed them down, and Hubs hit the gas after that and kept driving, ignoring the red lights along the way. Finally pulling myself together, I dialed 911 on my cell phone, and since the police station wasn't exactly nearby, the operator arranged to have some cops meet us at a local church a mile or 2 from where we actually were. Hubs kept driving forward, car still at our heels, and he somehow managed to swerve a turn in the middle of the intersection while making it look like we intended to go straight. The other car flew on by while we tailed it to the cops at the church. They took down our statements and sent a few cars out to try and find the kid adults. I was completely useless when it came to details, but Hub came through to save the day and could tell them the make, model, color of the car, the license plate, and describe details about the individuals. All I could remember in my mind was the face of the girl, the one who had mouthed she was sorry, and lo and behold, one of the officers took us to his car, flipped through his fancy police computer, and on the screen popped an image of the same girl I'd seen in the Walmart parking lot. Another click and the same young men, save for one, were then on the screen. Apparently these upstanding citizens had been confronted by the police department only nights prior. I wish I could remember the charges, but my mind was overwhelmed by that point, and most of the details were like a blur. My mind, I guess, intentionally tried to redact things to protect itself or something. Anyways, needless to say, I developed genuine anxiety about going to Walmart in the middle of the night after that point. Thankfully, we have both transitioned into day jobs since then, so now we share the pain of daywalkers' normal grocery store woes. I hope we never meet those jerks at Walmart again. I hope you never do either. Creeper at Walmart by Poop Squirrel. To preface, I'm a 30-year-old one-wife, mother and Marine Corps veteran. I practice and help instruct Taekwondo and Krav Maga. Never in a million years did I expect something like this would happen to me, but last night it did, and I hope this is the right place to get this off my chest. Last night I went to Walmart to do some grocery shopping. On my way into the store, I noticed a shady-looking, beat-up gray sedan circling around the parking lot and never parking. I found it odd, but brushed it off and went inside the store. After finishing shopping, I came out and noticed the same car still circling. Odd, but not enough to make me put my guard up. I unloaded my groceries, took the cart back to the cart corral, and when I entered my car, I got a really strong urge to immediately lock my doors before I started my car. Almost immediately after I did, the same sedan whipped up, partly blocking me, so that the only way I could get out was in reverse. It was a middle-aged man, and his window was rolled down and he was yelling at me. What made me nervous was both his hands were in his pockets. I couldn't be sure if he was just weird and cold or if he had something in those pockets, so I didn't want to take my eyes off his hands, which made it hard for me to back up. I rolled my window down an inch and asked him what he needed. Stupid and brave, I know. He said he needed help and that he couldn't hear me as well, so I could open my door, he recommended. I asked him what he needed help with, and he started yelling at me to just open my fucking door. At that point, I put my car in reverse and chanced a glance at my backup camera, during which time he had gotten out of his car and was at my door, trying to yank the handle, still yelling at me to open my door. I tore out of there so fast. I'm surprised I wasn't stopped by the police myself. I found a crowded, well-lit parking lot and called the police, who thankfully took me seriously and went to take a look, but the man was long gone. I know nothing happened, and perhaps I shouldn't still be shaken up over this, but that encounter really shook me up. I just wanted to share. Close call at Walmart by responsible base. I worked the graveyard shift for a long time. One night about 25 years ago, I had caught up with my neighbor's night work, but was unable to back up the work I had done. I decided to clock out and drive to Walmart to buy a box of new discs and leave the receipt for our bookkeeper so she could reimburse me. A few days after this incident, we learned that our computer had a virus that was corrupting the floppy disks we were using. Yes, it was that long ago. So you get the picture. Floppy disks for backup, no cell phones for most of us. It was a primitive time. I arrived at Walmart about 3 a.m, went in and found the discs. I decided to visit the toy department, believe it or not, as it was early November though, and I wanted to get Christmas ideas for my son, as well as several for my nieces and nephews. While I browsed, I felt someone watching me. I looked around, and there were 3 men nearby, and all were staring at me. I looked back at them long enough to fix their appearances in my mind and went on looking at the toys. I was in no hurry. I was off the clock and wouldn't need much time to back up my work after I got back to the office, so I continued to look around, even strolled through the housewares a few minutes. Every time I looked over my shoulder though, those 3 men were close and watching me. After the second time, alarms were sounding off in my head. They looked repellent-looking, with pasty, pale faces, as if they spent all their time indoors eating junk food, and their eyes were sallow, cold, and hard. What disturbed me most, though, was the way they were dressed, much too warmly for the weather that night. Even if it was November, it was only about 55 degrees outside, rather temperate. I was perfectly comfortable in a jean jacket. These guys were in heavy coats suitable for sub-freezing temperatures. Did they come from Scandinavia? And they had them buttoned up to their necks inside the store. The only reason I could think of for that was that they were hiding weapons beneath those coats. I finally headed toward the cash registers, thinking that if no one else was leaving the store when I did, I would ask the cashier to call security and request an escort to my vehicle. As I reached the register, I saw my stalkers standing just inside the doors. They muttered amongst themselves for a moment. Then they exited the store. As I was paying, a man and woman lined up behind me. I had seen them shortly before I neared the register, and they didn't seem to be paying any attention to me. I moved to the area between the registers and doors and stood waiting for the couple, fiddling with my buttons, blowing my nose. When they moved toward the door, so did I, staying just a few steps ahead of them though. I had not parked far outside, and I reached my vehicle quickly. The stalkers were sitting in a car that was parked nose to nose with my pickup truck. I hopped in, locked the door, and then sat back and stared at them as meanly as I could. The couple I had used as my unwitting escorts walked past me and got into a car a few spaces away. They left. After a minute or two, the stalker driver said something to the others, started the engine, and pulled away. I watched as they slowly left the parking lot, then ascended the nearby interstate highway overpass and took the entrance ramp. Only then did I start my own engine. I took my time too around as the engine warmed. I continued along the street for a couple of miles past the interstate, then pulled into a dark lot behind a strip mall, turned off my lights and engine and waited, watching the few vehicles that passed. I wanted to be certain that I would not lead those guys to my office building, which was isolated and, at that hour, usually deserted except for me. After my pulse slowed to normal, I restarted the truck and returned to work. I'm a female, but I'm almost 6 feet tall and weigh in at about 175 pounds. I know that my size has protected me from a lot of mayhem over the years. I was armed that night too. I carried a loaded Smith & Wesson .357 revolver, as well as a speed loader, which is, for those that don't know, like an extra cylinder full of bullets. Still, I probably would have been no match for those 3 determined assailants. This experience cured me of my nonchalantness about running errands in the wee hours, and validated my conviction that, at any time, if I got the feeling of someone's eyes crawling all over me, it was wise to look around and find the reason. About 3 months later, my husband and I were watching the local evening news, and they showed photos of 2 stalkers. They were wanted for armed robbery. Walmart Tweaker by All Giggle Bridges. While reading through some posts here last night, I remembered that I had an experience a few months back that sort of fits. I'll try to give it a short version, since I tend to ramble on forever if I don't stop myself. I'd taken my grandmother's car to Walmart to buy some groceries for her. She was elderly, gotten to the point where she couldn't drive, and my wife and I helped her out with stuff like this. I went in, bought all her stuff on the list, came back out, and got into the car. I had already cranked the car up and was going through the podcasts on my phone to find something to listen to, and since it was hot as hell in Alabama summer, I had the window cracked until the air conditioner finally got cold. Here's where the weird shit comes in. I was sitting staring at my phone, not paying attention to anything else like a damn idiot, when someone knocked on my window. I looked up and saw a cracked out, scabbed all over his face meth zombie standing there, with another similar-looking man standing right beside him. The first dude was your typical skinny meth head. Second dude was huge. Just wanted to add that. I asked what was up.
"You left keys in your door,"
the thing one replied.
"What?"
I said, confused as hell because my car was obviously running.
"You left your keys in your door,"
he said again, jabbing his finger at the door.
"Nah, man,"
I replied.
"The car is running."
I didn't add, "You fucking idiot," but I felt like it would have been appropriate.
"Just open the door, man,"
Thing one screamed, totally dropping the pretense of the keys and trying to be helpful and trying the door handle. Thank God the car locked automatically when you cranked it up. I mean, this dude screamed, you know? It was fucking crazy. I was much more calm than I thought I might have been in a situation like this. The weird thing was, I never tripped about it. Just answered the guy, told him he was wrong. It was only afterwards that it hit me what was going on. He stared at me for a few seconds, then turned to his silent, gigantic buddy and said, "Fuck it," while he shrugged his shoulders. Then they walked off, probably in search of another possible victim. I backed GMA's car out and left, thinking about the odd interaction. Then it hit me that they were most likely trying to do, I know I sound stupid, but the whole thing happened so fast that I was just reacting, you know. Then I called the cops. The police station was within a quarter mile of Walmart, so hopefully they caught the idiots. That's it. I know it's not nearly as awful scary as some of the stories here, but I figured I'd post. Forgot to add, this was a packed-out Walmart parking lot at around 9:30–10 in the morning, broad daylight. People were everywhere, and I wasn't even parked that far away from the store.
Creepy men at Walmart, let's never meet again. By BBGRLELI.
At first, I wasn't going to share this story, but now I'm more over the situation. I guess it's safe to share. Before we start, judge me all you want, but I know I can be a bit stupid. You know everyone can be, though. It's only because I don't like to force myself to live on edge because of the sick people in the world. I live my life as freely and fearlessly as I possibly can. At the time of this story, I was 23. My birthday was just past the 29th of November, making me 24 now. I was only 5'2" and about 170 to 180 pounds. I was strong enough to help move furniture, but not strong enough to really defend myself the way I preferred. You would think, as someone who had survived an attempted sexual assault, that I would learn some self-defense, but I've lost a lot of motivation and self-worth since. The abusive relationship really made it worse. But that's beside the point. So, to start, I won't go into major details, but I had just moved to Jackson, Tennessee from Miami, Florida, because I had gotten out of an extremely physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship that lasted 3 years. About sometime in June, my current boyfriend and I had been doing trips pretty much every weekend. We would visit a new hiking and waterfall area. You probably thought I meant the other trips. Although there wasn't a nightlife, Tennessee is amazingly beautiful. We went to this place called the Narrows of Harpeth. That was one of the most underwhelming places we'd been to, but still relaxing. After we found a cool place to sit down and swim after hiking 2 hours, a few shots and one blunt later, it was time to make the hour trip back to Jackson. I put my shoes on and I slipped my dress back on, which was a little bit above the knee length, like if I bent too far forward, my little bum would be on display. I own my body and my sexuality, so showing some skin never really bothered me, and I don't really think about it, because I just expect people to respect me as I respect them and the way I dress. Anyways, on the way back to the car, I began to be a bit tipsy, and the dumbass that I am managed to trip and fall and scrape my leg pretty badly. It's actually scarred from that now. Anyway, I told my boyfriend we needed to go to Walmart once we were back in Jackson, so I could thoroughly clean my wound and use some hydrogen peroxide and Neosporin. An hour later, we were at Walmart. Mind you, it was about 9 p.m., going on 10 p.m., not really late by any means. We got what we needed, but because I was still somewhat tipsy and pretty high from the blunt I finished in the car ride home, I got so distracted so easily that I remembered my boyfriend got me the wrong size case for my iPhone. I had the 11 Pro. He had gotten me the Max instead of just the Pro. I wanted an idea of what I could trade for it, and if he wanted to look at some of the games as well as a gaming PC for me. I was happily tipsy and excited to find a new case, which if you've ever been to Walmart, the cases are never in order and often causes you to bend down and look at things, if you know what I mean. Well, in the same aisle, there was a man looking at the same cases, and I just said, "Excuse me, sorry, I need to look at the cases you're standing right in front of." I expected him to move, and he just looked at me with this blank yet dirty look. He eventually nodded and stepped over. So I was happily looking through the shelf about 5 minutes in, and this lady and what I assume was her 2 children approached me. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and I was thrown off by how close she was to me, especially with her baby, who looked no older than 9 months. I stepped back, and she just grabbed my arm and said, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. Look at that hair, wow." Her grip tightened on my arm, though. At this point, my heart was racing, and my face got so hot I was visibly scared. That's when my boyfriend said, "Everything okay, babe?" He looked at me equally concerned. I was thinking to myself, does this lady know my mom? Who the fuck is she? Is she an old family friend I don't remember? Mind you, I'm originally from Colorado. We have family here, but I don't know of any of my family that lives in Tennessee. Also, my mom loves to brag about her kids, so I'm trying to shake this weird feeling, but her daughter kept looking behind me, so I went to turn around and she went, "No, don't turn around. Walk with me, please." I don't know why, but I felt she was being genuine, and I just followed her. I guess it was still the effects of being high. We stepped over to the side by the baby clothes, which was still in front of the electronics at that point, and she said, "Baby, I'm so sorry to scare you, but there were 3 men surrounding you. They went by the laptops and talked, and then noticed a guy taking photos and videos of you while you were bent over looking at the phone cases. The other man was a tall guy next to you, and I don't know where the 3rd man went." All I could remember was this high-pitched ringing in my ears. My stomach flipped and felt like I was going to be sick. I never knew what people meant when they said everything slowed down, but in that moment everything went slow motion, and I was freaked out to the point that I had no clue what she said after that. It was as if I blacked out for a moment, and then quickly came to the realization that the family and my boyfriend were looking at me visibly panicked. I turned around and there he was. He was Hispanic, shorter than me by about 5'1", but he was very much built and also looked to be around 40. The other man, who was Caucasian, maybe in his 40s, was about 5'11". I'll never forget the dead blank rage in that Hispanic man's eyes, like I was his first meal in 5 days and was being stolen from him. That's when I saw the white man walk over to him. They said something and both looked at me, looked back at each other, and said something else, and started to walk slowly toward us. At that point, we all turned and headed for the registers, and that's when I thanked my lucky stars because there were about 3 cops at the front of the store. By the time I rudely pushed past people to get to the self-checkout with tears in my eyes and frantically repeating "excuse me" to everyone who got in front of me, I looked back and saw them just standing there, but with the 3rd guy this time. My heart sank, and I wanted to pass out at that moment. I guess it looked like I was going up to the cops, because they hightailed it once they saw me get close to them. Me being as high as shit, I wasn't going to chance the cops turning around on me because I was simply stoned and tipsy. My only thought was to get to the car, to get to the gun. Don't stop. My boyfriend said that he could barely keep up with me at that point. I had grabbed his hand so tight he had to force the grip off because I felt like I was going to crush his hands. And before anyone bashes my boyfriend, I didn't expect a man to be my savior. Also, he wasn't the angry, confrontational type. He was very calm and level-headed. I just knew I was the target, and I was putting him at risk. I knew they could easily jump him once one of them could overpower me after taking him out. I probably looked crazy, walking and running past everyone, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to become another missing sister, let alone missing 411. We made it to the car safely and peeled out of there. I've never seen my boyfriend drive so fast as he did, as he was beyond careful and would never speed. We sat at a Sonic for about an hour to make sure we weren't being followed. We recounted everything that had happened. I just couldn't believe we were both so tipsy to notice that we had become prey for some Walmart morons. I've never felt so stupid and irresponsible in my life. I never want to experience that fear and panic in my life again. I didn't even get the chance to thank the lady who pretty much saved me. Sometimes we talk about it still. What if the lady didn't see that guy and what he was doing? Even if we had caught on, there were 3 of them and only 2 of us. I think of the horrors. That night, I had a nightmare that the man attacked us in the parking lot. The creepiest part of the dream was that the 3rd man shoved me into the trunk, and as I went, I looked at his face, and all I could see was a featureless face.